What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to review God of War Ragnarok. Now, I've put in about 30 and a half hours. I beat it last night, and at this point, I'm just kind of cleaning up. I'm going for the platinum. There's a lot still to do. Probably going to take 40, 45 hours easily. I want to make this a point for the review as well. Going through the game, I did a lot on the way. I did a lot of the Berserker, kind of side bosses. I did a lot of the favors, the side quests in this game as the game was going on, to the point that when I finished it, when I was going through the last missions, I actually didn't have, much to do besides the main mission. Now, while I'm probably not going to do like a deep dive into the ending in a review, I'll probably do that in a separate video. We'll talk about the ending somewhere else. I do have to spoil it because we are going to kind of talk about specific plot threads, and I don't want to be constrained by anything. So I know not everybody has beaten it yet, but this is going to be a spoiler review. So is this game as good as everyone says? Is this one of the best games kind of ever created? Is this the game of the generation? I think this game is extremely, extremely good. Okay, I don't know if I'm willing to say it's the game of the generation. It's one of the best games I've ever played. It's definitely an incredible game, and its strengths, and at its high, I guess flawless would probably be the right word. At its best, throughout, there is some times where it's not at its best. Now, I will talk about that in this video, but let's go through some of the strengths. So visually, I think they absolutely nailed it. I mean, the character models look phenomenal, all of the realms, and I mean, when you go through this game, right, and the worlds open up, and they give you all these side quests, and they give you just all these random things to do, you realize, holy dear Jesus, they built multiple worlds. Now, yes, they're not Elden Ring. There's not 9 Elden Ring worlds in this, but they built pretty gigantic, open areas, let's say, that you can go around, and there is stuff everywhere. There's stuff to get. There's side bosses that'll just magically appear. You'll just walk into them, and they're a blast because, as I've said, actually I said this in the impressions video, they rely on kind of the core principles or the core mechanics of this game to kind of carry them throughout, because some of the side quests are a little tedious. I do think the side quests offer enough variety that you feel, okay, I want to do this, or maybe the reward is something like, ooh, I want that amulet, or something, right? It's something kind of special, and you say, well, I'll go do it, or there's just a desire in me, at least, to kind of 100% any open world game I play. So I was like, well, give me a side quest, I'm gonna do it immediately. But ultimately it falls back on puzzle solving, it falls back on combat, obviously very, very heavily. There's always conversations going on with these characters, there's always stories being told, narrative, whatever, and it's always so good. It's always so good. Now, the puzzles maybe not so. We'll talk about that later, but the characters are incredible. I stand on Amicia in A Plague Tale Requiem as one of the best characters ever created. She absolutely kills it, and I do think she deserves the best actor of the year award or whatever at the Game Awards. But Christopher Judge, Jesus Christ, Christopher Judge does an outstanding job as Kratos. I love what they've done with him. It's tough, and this is obviously getting into spoilers. It's tough when you have a character that, in my opinion, I've always said this, I do think he had a little bit of, dimension to him. I think he had a little bit of depth in the past games. And I'm talking like before 2018. But obviously with 2018, and now specifically with this, holy cow, they evolve his character so much, and they make him a more grounded, like a loving father, but one that, they don't destroy his character, because a lot of times modern day games, right, they'll bring, or not anything, modern day movies, whatever, you'll bring back a character just to kind of hand the baton off, and you'll ruin that character. You'll purposely make that character suck just so that you can make other characters look good. I mean, Hollywood, that's literally what they've been doing for like 6-7 years. This game doesn't do that. In fact, I always kind of supported Kratos' side of things over Atreus's. Atreus had a very up and down story in this game. I can't say that I love his character, but I will say by the end, I definitely liked it quite a bit more. He goes through a journey, and it's not like a flatline journey. It definitely has its ups and downs, but Christopher Judge obviously carries it as Kratos and does so freaking, just such a phenomenal job. Freya, I mean, like Brock and Sindri, holy, I mean, the characters in this game, it's like an ensemble cast. If Christopher Judge doesn't win or whatever, somebody make a new award for, the entire cast of the game, because the cast of this game is so good. And not just the acting, but their journeys. Sindri, where he ends up, I'm not a huge fan of. But like Brock, holy God, like he was incredible. And Sindri is an incredible character. It's just I prefer him to be our friend and not somebody who very much resents us, right? And that's the case with this game. Not everything goes perfectly well. I think Richard Schiff, and I think that's how you say his last name, as Odin, I love it. I love Odin so much. I love he's very cocky. He's very sarcastic. He makes a lot of jokes. He's got a lot of just spunk to him, right? Like he's kind of high energy, but also kind of laid back. I love what they did. He's very non-intimidating, and maybe that comes back to kind of haunt at the end, because it's like, I don't know how seriously I can take you, and also I'm so powered, Kratos is so powerful that I leveled him up by the end. I actually kind of flew through the Odin boss at the very end of the game. So, I overall really do like what they did with Odin, though, and I like what they did with a lot of them. Like Thor was pretty good. One thing I will say, Angrboda, I can keep going because these characters are actually really, really good. The game, on the flip side of things, one of the weaknesses, it has a weird way of just shoving these characters kind of away at random points and times. Angrboda, I really thought was going to be a much more special, influential part, whatever you want to say, to the game, and she's not. She is important. She's absolutely important, and specifically, Atreus really thanks her at the end for being the one. I wouldn't really consider her to be the one at the end. I think it was kind of a team effort really there, but so something like that. It was man, I like her a lot. Angrboda is awesome. And she's got a very sweet personality, and I like her with Atreus and all that, and I'm sure we'll see more of it. But they kind of push her aside. Thor, Thor is kind of difficult because I like Thor's journey. I like the character that they were trying to go for, this father who really has just kind of had enough, and his father is constantly putting him down, and he's the town drunk and all this stuff, and then Atreus kind of gets through to him. So I like his whole journey, and it actually makes total sense, including all the way up to, when Kratos can kill him, he doesn't kill him, then Thor picks up the hammer to kill Kratos, but he doesn't do it, and then Odin kills him. So the Odin killing him part, it's that whole journey. And I guess I get it, right? He goes through the journey, he completes his character arc, which is that kind of like a Walking Dead thing, right? Remember when Walking Dead was kind of at its peak, characters would complete their arc, and then you'd kill them, because, once you complete your arc, you have to die. And that's kind of what this game did, well, at least to Thor. That's what this game did to Thor. But the story elements of this game is extremely strong. I love Kratos' journey specifically as a father, and then his journey with Atreus. I mean, some of the best moments in this game is not necessarily, fighting Thor is awesome, specifically that final fight. Odin is a pretty sweet fight. There's some cool fights, there's some cool locations and set pieces, and again, with the moving one-shot camera is really awesome. But some of the sweetest moments in this game, or the best, is just when they're hugging, when Atreus comes back and he just hugs. He just wants to hug Kratos, and Kratos is like, well, what do I even do? I guess I'm hugging. And that, I never cried. I didn't cry one time in this game. My wife actually teared up a couple times when she watched the cutscenes, but I didn't. But I did feel immense emotion, because it's we've never seen, and I guess maybe part of that's we've never seen Kratos that way before. So it's I don't really know how to take this, but I buy it. I believe it. I believe that he is this guy now, and I believe that he is still Kratos. He still has that Kratos thing to him. But he also is this father who literally just wants the best for Atreus, and just wants Atreus to be okay and all that stuff. And the idea that at the very end, when he's Loki will go, but Atreus will stay with me, or however he says it, it's there's some perfect quotes in this game. Or when they make themselves their promises that they'll kind of be with each other always, even when they split up. Here's the thing, the game does kind of give itself away, because Freya, becoming your companion, I guess that part was, oh my god, that actually happens. And Thor being Atreus' companion a few times is awesome. But Freya having the whole XP and stuff, and then you think, well, how am I supposed to do the end stuff if Kratos dies, right? And that I would say generally hurts it, because it's the whole point of the game is breaking prophecy, right? That you don't let prophecy dictate your actions. You make your own choices, and that goes into the future. And it's okay, that is very powerful, and I really like that, and it worked. And I like the flip that they did, where it was Odin on Atreus instead of Kratos on Atreus. I love that. I thought that was very, very clever. But at the same time, it's well, you could kind of see it coming because I don't know, you know what I mean? You just could, because of Freya I think those are mainly the two reasons. Freya really seemed like the companion that you were going to have for the end game, not Atreus. And then with Kratos, it's like, well, how am I supposed to do all the other things in this world if he dies? So obviously he doesn't die. So I wasn't really worried about him when it got to the end. And you know, granted, I didn't want him to die. I said that 1,000 times leading in. I did not want them to kill off Kratos, and they didn't. So I am happy about that. But you could kind of see it. So I guess, I don't know, am I nitpicking? I wanted it to be a little bit more surprising what would happen. Maybe. Some of the, well, I guess, let me say one more huge positive, and I said this for the impressions, the combat. Dear God, the combat is so good. It is, and in my opinion, it's very much like the first one, not in that it's literally a one-to-one, but that it feels you feel the same empowerment that you felt in the first game. As this game goes and you get more powerful and you're unlocking and you're swapping different things and you're really trying to get like the best build that you can possibly have, but also a build that kind of fits your play style. It's incredible. And when you are powerful and when you're fighting some of these mini bosses, whether you're overpowered for that mini boss or whether you're facing bosses that really, you know, test your skill level, it feels so good. The combat is insane. It really is. It's one of the best parts of this game. And again, the game, you know, really relies on combat. So let's talk about a few negatives. Well, again, seeing things coming is kind of a negative. Atreus, you know, some of his story decisions, like in the middle, going to Odin, coming back, his attitude, just like he kind of had towards the end of the first game, wasn't, you know, a huge fan. Again, oddly pushing Angrboda, Thor, I think those two kind of in particular, to the sideline. I would say Tyr. I would say I really didn't like Tyr, but considering that is also a gigantic plot point of what happens with Tyr, it's like, all right, well, I can't really say Tyr's a bad character because you got to think about Odin. You got to think about were there signs. You got to think about what he was saying the whole time. So, like, I won't say that anymore. I actually think that kind of redeemed the character because of the plot twist, let's say, there. So that was interesting. But the game is huge. And I don't know if it needed to be so huge. Again, like the favors and stuff, I'm having fun. Like I actively this morning, like it's very early in the morning when I'm recording this. I'm recording it obviously like presently. I want to go back and play it like right now. Like as I'm talking, I want to go play it. I have a lot of stuff to clean up. I've, like I said, maybe 10-ish hours of mini bosses and collectibles that I still have to find. So, like, I actively, and it's not because of the channel or anything like that, I literally just want to go back and play the game, okay? So, actively want to. But the favors, in my opinion, they're not like, this is not the best side quests of all time in any game, all right? Let's make that clear. Also, there is a lot of, not pauses, but this game relies on a weird structure that the first, 2018 relied on as well. And I try to think back to like God of War 3. I guess technically they always have. And what I'm talking about is you'll have story kind of be given to you, specifically in Ragnarok, and you go through, like you shimmy across walls, and you go underneath like a rock, and you're jumping up things, and there's just so much downtime that it's shimmy across a wall, do a couple jumps, solve a puzzle, fight an enemy, and it repeats over and over and over and over again. And again, especially the fighting is a key, fundamental part of this game, and I really, really like that. And I don't know if you could actually break the game up any other way, because obviously pacing is important, and you don't want it to be all dead, and you don't want it to be all high. I mean, you literally can't do it. If they could do all high, maybe they would. But you know what I mean? So I guess what I'm trying to say is by the end of the game, the idea of constantly shimmying along walls and all this stuff, and the puzzles in this game, I think there are a lot of very, very clever puzzles, but there are so many. There's hundreds, and maybe thousands actually, like low thousand, but there is at least hundreds and hundreds of puzzles that this game has, and I don't know if well, firstly, I'm horrible. I should disclose that. So any puzzles in any game will make me generally angry because, not really. I mean, I do enjoy, and there are several puzzles in God of War Ragnarok where I'll solve them, and I'll literally go like this. I was like, yes, because it's like, I kind of figured it out. And there's some tricky ones, like there's some hard ones, but there's some sections in this game where it is just puzzles. And that's, to me, not that. The pacing sometimes is so wild because it can be so high, but it can also be incredibly low like that. Also, in terms of the pacing, in terms of the length of the game, One thing that I found interesting was there were times, specifically, not necessarily in the middle, probably like in the 60-70% of the game, where I just felt like you could cut, I think you could cut some of this stuff. There's some kind of fetch quests that are story missions that I don't know if you necessarily needed. And I felt that in the moment, but I really felt that by the end, because the ending, while the war, at Asgard is incredible, like very, very cinematic. You're having things being destroyed, not off screen, but far distance, right? It's very rushed. I mean, you literally go through this whole thing and you're trying to like help your allies, and you're solving big conflicts, or you're participating in big conflicts. But then when you get to the end, getting the armies and then attacking Ragnarok is like maybe 5 minutes of cutscenes where you designate, right in the cutscene, you designate which person, like Freya, you're gonna go, you're gonna unite the army of blank, and then Sindri, you're gonna unite this army, and and it's like, we spent all game not doing that, really. Like, we kind of helped individual problems, and now in the last couple minutes, and so this, to me, this is why I don't think it's like a generational one of the best games of all time, because the pacing I don't think is perfect. It's not like incredibly well done. The puzzles annoyed me a little bit, and specifically some of these plot points, very rushed, like oddly rushed, because the whole game really, and this is probably why, all right, this is maybe the best way of saying it, the whole game takes its time. It really takes its time. It lets it breathe. It lets Kratos, be Kratos. It lets Atreus be Atreus. It lets these characters develop and develop story arcs and all this stuff. And then at the very end, they unite the armies somehow in a few minutes, and then they attack Asgard. And it's like, it just happens so quickly that it's like, well, you kind of, and then you storm the walls, you get through the walls, you fight Thor, you fight Odin, game's over. And a little bit more after that. But I mean, it's odd. It's kind of odd how fast it goes at the end, and it's such a sharp contrast with literally the entire game. Maybe the beginning. I would say the first 2 hours moves very quickly. The last hour moves very quickly. Everything in between lets it breathe. So maybe, I mean, does it reflect the beginning? Maybe, and maybe that's some sort of story kind of thing, or like in the writer's room, there's like a phrase for that. I don't know, right? Because I'm not one, but it just felt odd because as you're playing through, I'm not really thinking about the beginning anymore. I'm thinking of this long, drawn out, but in a fine way. It's not a bad thing. A nice drawn out story. They're taking their time. Oh, and all of a sudden you're rushing. And it's when you do that, it's a little odd. So it's a bit uneven. So is it as good as people are saying? I mean, like, I don't give scores. I've said that before. But if you're new to the channel, you'd be like, well, what are you going to give it? I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not going to give it a score. I will say it's easily one. I don't want to spoil it. Don't want to spoil it. It's one of, if not my favorite game of the year, but I'll do a ranking video at the end of the year, and I'll rank, the games, and you'll see what's my game of the year. It's up there. It's absolutely, so I don't want people to think, and I don't want people to kind of walk away with this review saying, oh, Alex was disappointed, right? I definitely don't want that, because overall, was it everything I wanted? I don't know if necessarily it was everything I wanted, because it was so, like, who could predict how that game went? Who could predict it? I made theories. Some of them were right, some of them were wrong. And a lot of, I mean, oh my God, Captain Kuba, right? Which is a great guy and God of War channel, right? There were loads of theory, how he kind of predicted how the game would go. Like, a lot of people got things wrong, and that's cool. Like, ultimately, when you make theories, especially for games that you care about, maybe you kind of want them to be wrong because you don't want to know the entire game, right, going in. And you do not know this game going into it, where the full game is going to take you. You may know parts, and again, there's themes, the father-son relationship, the like prophecies kind of don't define us, we write our own destiny, that kind of stuff, and some of that's even in the trailer, right? That stuff is like the major themes, and there's other themes of the game. And I think some of those, by the way, those themes are so powerful. And again, specifically with Kratos, or Kratos with Atreus, is flawless. I mean, again, Kratos has always been one of my favorite characters. In this game, though, Kratos is phenomenal. He really is. Not just like his animations or his fighting or anything like that, but also who he kind of is as a person. I could keep going. I could keep going on this game. It is a very It's a special game. Also, though, it's Sony Santa Monica just kind of doing its thing, and I don't want to kind of overlook that either, where I mentioned it in the beginning, where, like, there's 9 realms, and not all 9 are, like, fully realized in the same way. Like, they're not all even. All 9 realms are not even. But when you think about really, like, even the puzzles, they're high-quality puzzles, right? Visually, or they take some smarts or whatever. This game, you know, right now, again, 30 hours, and it'll probably be 40, 45. It keeps such a high-quality bar. Like I said in the beginning, whether it's visuals or the acting, or obviously the story is a very long, I mean, even if you just do the story missions and not the side stuff, this is a long story. It's long. So it keeps such a high-quality bar to it the entire time. Well, and, you know, sometimes they make mistakes. It's not always perfect, but the quality, like, they're always trying. It's always such a high, kind of like a Sony, or Sony Santa Monica in this case, quality. And I don't want to overlook that, because you think of, like, at, like, Red Dead, maybe for me, like, Persona 5, like, being, like, a 100-hour game and keeping such high quality. Red Dead 2 being, like, a 100-plus game, keeping such high quality. It's hard to make, you know, some of those games are open world, some of them aren't, but it's hard to make really long games that holds a bar, because you could have, you know, again, while I have pacing issues, and it's only because I noticed it, because it is such a sharp contrast, but I'm not taking anything away from the fact that when you make big games, it is hard to keep a quality bar so high. And whether I agreed with certain decisions they made, like super puzzle heavy sections, and then you would kind of lean away from them, and it's like, oh, that's kind of odd. The quality was always high. It's not like suddenly it just kind of plummeted. Does that make sense? So I definitely kind of want to throw it out there. So, look, nobody's coming to me 6 days later or whatever for, you know, should I buy this game? But if you are, maybe some people are, well, I greatly appreciate it. I think this game is 1,000% worth it. Now, here's the deal. If you didn't like God of War 2018, there is nothing in this game that's going to change your mind. Absolutely not a thing. If you even thought God of War 2018 was okay, because here's the thing. I think in a lot of ways, the story, but maybe like the character arcs in this game are better than, I think actually there are some maybe story elements of 2018 that's better than this, but overall story, characters, character arcs, much better in this game. With that being said, I still think if you thought the first game was okay, I think you'll probably think the same thing here, because this is a bigger, you could say bloated, I would say bloated with mostly high quality stuff. But it's still the same because you're still going to be doing the same kind of stuff. There's still the puzzles. There's still the fighting. So if you weren't a huge fan of the fighting, you know, it's better now, but it's a more refined, just higher bar than it was. It's still the same thing. Does that make sense? The puzzles are still generally the same thing. They're obviously different, but if you didn't like it back then, you're not going to like it now. Hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from. So there you go. There's my extremely long review of God of War Ragnarok. I loved it. I loved this game. The nitpicks or the things I'm, you know, talking about is just, you know, when you have a game of the generation, is it, you know, you have to kind of critically analyze it. It's one of my favorite games of this year, and I'm happy it kind of unites so many people online, PlayStation gamers, right? So many people. This was the game, arguably, of the year. It really was. Elden Ring kind of, you know, jumped out, but God of War Ragnarok was the game so many people were looking forward to, and now it's out, and now we'll have to wait quite a bit for what's next, but I'll do an ending kind of discussion video next, and then we'll talk about the future of God of War / God of something else maybe in future videos. Okay, let me know what you think. Make sure you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on, and I'll see you all on the next one.